So hello, it's me LETTERBOXD and today we are going back for Best of Watchlist series and it is episode number 3. So if you're not familiar with this concept or series at all, you will have the instructions or a little brief right here. Roll the clip. Here we're going to go to LETTERBOXD and see what movies I have watched and fast opinions on them and should you watch them or not. It's mixed with new and old movies, so there is something for everyone, you know. So without further ado, let's go straight to the first movie, which was Gerald's Game, another Netflix originals movie, and I hope that this will be one of the better ones. Based on Stephen King's novel, which is always great to hear, it brings much more hype for the movie usually. The concept felt very interesting, but it could easily go very dull and very fast. But I was very surprised that it wasn't in the end. This older couple went to some kind of summer cottage to spice up the things in the bedroom, you know. When they started their things, when they started to do their thing, everything went wrong. This guy collapsed down of a heart attack and the woman was cuffed to a bed with no escape plan or anything like that at all. From there, things get a little spicy, but in a different meaning, and she starts to see things and freak out slowly but surely. I liked how the movie expands the boundaries of being sane. The woman starts to hallucinate things from her unconscious side of her brain and literally goes through this thinking process with these hallucinations and argues about different things while trying to keep her sanity after the tragic events which she witnessed earlier. The story establishes that feeling of desperation pretty well on a big screen, while it keeps us guessing what is real in this movie and what is not. After one thing happens another thing and another and another, which we could not see in advance or guess at all. Carla Gugino was exceptionally great in this movie as this very traumatized woman Jessie. She brought so much talent and skill to the screen, it was just awesome. The first half of the movie was awesome to say the least. The intensity kept rising and rising, but in the halfway mark they lost some of it, unfortunately. I was so relieved that it built back up for the climax of the movie. Unfortunately, the ending was a little disappointing because it was too simple for this kind of story and I expected a little more. And it keeps you on the edge of your seat all the time, so it didn't have that well-earned ending which it deserved to have. All the intensity kind of vanished without a trace, but that'll do this time, you know. The movie itself was very good, but there could have been a little better ending though. Also, the Moonlight Man kind of felt off. He didn't feel like he was a part of the story. Meanwhile, in the end of the movie, they are telling about this monster who made some seriously disturbing things, but spared Jessie this time. It felt so cheesy, you know, overall. It didn't make sense. Why they showed him as a monster when he wasn't even established in the movie properly. It is very close to the novel, but still I would say that 2017's it is still the best Stephen King's adaptation till date. And I gave this movie 3.5 stars out of 5. And the next up we have Donnie Darko. First time watching, the trailer seemed very interesting and mysterious enough to stick my pair of eyes into this movie. I loved the performance of a young Jake Gyllenhaal, who again surprised me with a different kind of role, which he nailed again. At first I was kinda confused, but I got a grip of the story in no time after that. Donnie Darko is this kid who is being controlled by this bunny thing named Frank, who makes Donnie do some terrible crimes at night. I don't know why, but this movie kinda reminded me of Death Note many times. Frank was reminding me of a Ryuk because he was manipulating the kid to do whatever he wants him to do. I love how this movie handled so many emotions in it. For example, the thrill, the comedy, drama, and fear itself. It balanced all these emotions pretty well and made the story much more intriguing. The cinematography was gorgeous to look at. The angles and artsy shots were so great. Some of the director's choices were so artistic but weird at the same time. Also, some of the stuff felt like unnecessary to the story, like the separate announcement of the chapters. Those things felt like an excessive and confusing add-ons which never brought anything to the story. Maybe I just didn't get it. The movie itself was weird and very solid, but the tone was kinda confusing overall. Still, very good movie. And I gave this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. Next up we have Mute. This should be very original story from Netflix. At least that's what I heard. I hope that this would be a good time and would bring something new to the table. Because being honest here, Netflix hasn't made any great movies past few years. Only couple. But most of them have been pretty bad so far. So I expected a little more from this one. The trailer was an awesome taste of what I hoped to see on the screen while watching Mute. Immediately in the beginning we got a backstory which explained the state of this mute man perfectly and gave us an information we needed to know about this protagonist mute man Leo, played by Alexander Skarsgård. Straight from the beginning, the visuals were on point. Whole visual concept was basically a mutation between Blade Runner 2049 and Fifth Element. At least that's what I thought after seeing first scenes and the color palette for the first time. From that, I could almost say that this movie would be literally something different, sad and dark, but also innovative in a way. I still couldn't tell what this movie was all about from the first 20 minutes, but I was very eager to see how it will escalate later. The sudden disappearance of Leo's girlfriend was so sudden that it didn't even make any goddamn sense. It was kinda stupid, but at the same time very intriguing though. When I saw Paul Rudd as Cactus for the first time on the screen in the nightclub, I already knew that he would be the funny guy for sure. And well, he tried to be funny, but sometimes this he's called comedy didn't quite go through. Some of his one-liners were funny, but nothing too special though. Progress of the story was slow, very slow. It could easily be much more shorter than the final product was. There was a lot of stuff in it, but still everything played some part to the story somehow by the end of everything. I liked it overall, but it could have been a little shorter though. I liked the character development which we got for Leo's character as well as Cactus too. The emotions were there and it was brought to the screen pretty well. Also the little details like the updated technology were just so fabulous. Gilbert Over's performance as Maxim was very impressive. The Russian accent was on top notch all the way through. Nice sci-fi drama journey with a spice of romance and action in it. I liked it. And I gave this movie 3 stars out of 5. Next up we have 1922. It's Stephen King's adaptation, so it has to be freaking thrilling. I watched it without any expectations to not get disappointed afterwards. This story is about the consequences for killing a person for own gaining purposes and about questioning own morals as a human being while doing so. James' family is divided because of a mom and dad who are arguing where they should live and what they want to have from life. Mom wants them to sell those lands that she legally owns and move to the city, while dad, on the other hand, doesn't want anything to change. The son isn't quite sure yet about anything, but he has an opinion, which is to stay put and live a life like they have been doing it always earlier. He decides to do what his dad tells him to do, keep this land and live a life without complications, which are his mother and her desires at this moment. So, after the crime, they try constantly to cover up the stains, and they learn that killing a person is much more harder than it looks like, and that it makes more work for them in the end. It is constant cover up and working to not to get caught by the end. And this story is all about that. The action they made to gain from it, the consequences they had to face for doing so, the work rate they had to rise to get all covered up, and the realization of the wrongdoing at the end. This movie is very solid story and character-wise. The development was great, and the story was entertaining and thrilling overall. I loved the vintage style, and the director distributed the screen pretty well, that exact style, while keeping us in tension all the times. The creepy strings made everything feel so uneasy and much more emotionally intensive. Great movie overall, one of the better Netflix originals for sure, and I gave this movie 3.5 stars out of 5. Next up we have The Conjuring. This is James Wan's finest horror movie if you ask me. I loved it first time watching, I adored it second time watching, and now it is my third time doing this. This was something so new and refreshing that it broke horror community and made a new standards for the modern horror movies as we have seen the past few years. The storytelling is so high class that it didn't need to do any precautions for the story itself because it was very chronological and compelling overall. I loved also the fact that every little detail was important somehow later in the story, and it left very small amount of questions asked about the movie or some forgotten things by the end of everything. The performances were on point. Actors, actresses, and the little beginnings of masters made some seriously impressive job on screen representing their roles. The intensity of suspense was real. This movie has many suspenseful moments where you think that jump scare will pop up, but in the matter of fact it doesn't at first, and when it happens very surprisingly. The sound effects makes those moments so much better, worse, because they scared the living shit out of me. Literally. The movie is awesome in every way. I think it's relevant to call this movie a modern horror classic by now. I think in 10 years or so we could call it an all-time classic. You should see this movie. It really gets you paranoid and your skin crawl. I gave this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. And we are moving on to the sequel, The Conjuring 2. After revisiting the first Conjuring movie, I immediately jumped in for this one, hoping to get me just paralyzed of fear. I loved the first one very much, and I knew that this would going to be a mad ride straight to the hell. I had no complaints whatsoever throughout the movie. The movie started with some of the most scariest opening sequences I have ever witnessed, and in it we got ourselves straight back to the action without any chilling at all. Like usually these kind of movies start slow and tries to build up the momentum, but here we already had that momentum in advance and the things were getting serious straight in from the beginning. That was an awesome thing to have. We got to see the villain of this movie, Valak, which is the most scariest and the best creature monster character brought to the big screen ever in my opinion. Character development wasn't needed, at least for Warrens anymore. The new haunted British family needed one though. Because of that, the movie could actually jump straight to the action without going through any backstories before that. Oh man, in the first movie I praised the style of directing and how that style kept the intensity so high, unpredictable, delivering us pure fear. They are doing that thing again in this movie too, which was great thing to have back for the sequel too. Also, that makes the scenes so much scarier and surprising when you don't know what will happen, but you are sensing that something is going to happen soon. This one scene around the half an hour mark was so frustrating, but in a good way. I knew something would pop up and scare the living shit out of me again, while I was getting more and more paranoid. Here I'm talking about the tent scene, where the boy sends his toy truck to the tent, and when he goes to the bed, the toy truck mysteriously drives back to his room itself. Also, the painting scene was bloody soul crushing. It really sucked my soul out of me. I just got so scared because of that. I was already so paranoid and this scene just finished me. I could literally go on and on telling you how great this movie was. Every scene it threw at us was frightening, and I would be right saying so, but we already know that. There is not many masterpieces that got the sequel, which is also a masterpiece. Not many franchises have reached that goal, so this must be something truly special. It really reaches the quality of the first movie, if not even surpassing it, which is so damn impressive, and I must salute to the brains of these masterpieces, James Wan himself. Now I'm waiting for the next release, which will be The Nun. And I give this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. And the next one is Clinical. Another Netflix original, and I hope that this will be good because I like psychology itself, so the topic was very close to me. The movie tells the story about the psychiatrist who had an horrorish incident where one of her patients attacked her and by the end killed herself. So now, 2 years later, she's trying to heal this post-traumatic stress that she's experiencing by attending to the psychiatrist herself. Then she starts to experience some disturbing things that she hasn't been before. I must say that some editing choices were kind of pushing me off and distracting me constantly because they tried to be something very edgy, but I didn't buy that at all. The supporting characters weren't supportive at all, and they lacked context. They felt like a bunch of strangers who happened to wander around our protagonist. The story hadn't any emotional load at all. It was like a blurry black on a white all the way through. The concept itself was kind of stupid to begin with. In the beginning they seemed to have at least some effort to make this movie work, but it just doesn't live up to that, and by the end of the movie it trips so many times on itself. The ending was a little better though. I also thought that this was going to end earlier, but it didn't. I was confused that it kept going and going. Then the movie just ended in the middle of the scene. I was so disappointed. I mean, you won't miss a thing if you choose not to watch it, so I gave this movie 1.5 stars out of 5. And here it was, this week's episode of Best of Watchlist. Leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. And what did you thought about these movies? Comments down below. Let me see what you all thought. I'll see you in the next video as always. Cheers.